Hi everybody, I just finished reading a book. It's from this series of books. I'd really love to read that one next. Oh, there's another good one. And that's the one that made me think about what the characters do in a book. Basically, I hunted all around for this book and I think I finally found it at a half-price books. I just thought I would never be able to find it, but I really was curious to know what like a novel by John Ashbery would actually be like. And I read this one aloud, and it was really fun, but I don't really feel like I probably got it because I hadn't really read Alfred and Guinevere yet. And I think one of the best parts of the first read of Alfred and Guinevere is that you get excited about coming back to this one. I mean, I was so impressed with this book, it kind of harkened back to my time reading this guy. And this book fit right in with other reading I'd recently done. I mean, these journals are like way underread, at least among my friends, though I don't really have that many friends, but I just can't even describe how good. And so that gets you acquainted with reading diaries or whatever. And then I've been reading a lot of Beckett, you know, who's like the master of that style that is full of, well, how would I describe it? A place where the grammar is challenging, but I guess the words and colloquialisms themselves aren't. Although I recently learned the word introrse from a piece in here called image. And then of course you spend time reading like absurd plays, Craps Last Tape and stuff, and also these Kenneth Koch ones I told you I found. And Kenneth Koch has this really nice thing on the back. I don't know why I waste so much time imagining other people being envious of yet other people. The sentences I wanted to pick out to you are kind of on these pages, and that one on 120 is the one that Ashbery picks out in his introduction. I'm really gonna have to reread this thing, but I think it's "You better not call me baby, or I'll tell about the dead man in the park, and you'll have your dreams again." All the time I spent reading this book, I was thinking to myself about how I wanted to excerpt every sentence and read it to everyone I know who appreciates writing to any degree. But then I also realized on some level that excerpting the sentences without the context would rob them of half their splendor that they get by just being in this perfect little book. It's like the thing I most took away from Kenneth Koch's blurb is that he read it 3 times, and that seems right. This book was $12.95 in 2001 when the Madison Public Library bought a first printing. I'll set it over here on the poems of Sextus Propertius. And now for the part where I highlight some of my favorite sentences. "I beg your pardon, it is a word and means in your lungs." Let me try that again. "I beg your pardon, it is a word and means in your lungs." "I beg your pardon, it is a word and means in your lungs." I mean, it's just so good. "My ideal evening dress," Guinevere said, "is an all-raspberry chiffon with a sequin bodice and Juliet cap, slashed sleeves and an ostrich-tip fan and floating panels. Now I am going out and watch the men mulch the dahlias." Always something new to learn. In that video of Kenneth Koch I always talks about juxtaposing things. And very often while reading this book for the first time, I just had to stop and admire how one page taken by itself as a poem contained the most delightful, the most delightful juxtapositions. Like on this particular page, I liked how it had this sentence: "I think black walnuts add a lot to fudge, don't you?" And then it also has, a bunch of good fudge sentences up here. And then down here we have, "Here we have not so much nature and we have more art." I just like that collection of thoughts of like the nature and art of baking and the nature of walnuts and the art of making the fudge, and just the difference in those locations described, the pantry and the Netherlands itself. And this isn't one of the most remarkable, but you see all about the ship, of course. the interesting schemes, the typical people, the ship newspaper printed right in the middle of the ocean. I thought that kind of seemed microcosmic, or like the interesting schemes, the typical people, the ship newspaper printed right in the middle of the ocean. So you can go ahead and, return your library books. When Rue Morgue is mentioned, makes you want to check this one out. What causes this on spines? What causes that? Anyway, I'm lucky to have a copy of this thing. See ya.